I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I am strong in the Lord. You are strong in the Lord. We are strong in the Lord.
What's good, family? The King's in the building. Thank you for joining us for another episode of King Talks, where you have real men with real faith discussing real issues with that real talk. Shout out to our family, Holy Culture Radio, and also our family on Glue TV. Here with my big bro, Chris Pender, once again. Bro, how you feeling, man? How's everything, bro?
Oh man, I'm living my best life, man. Living my best life, bro. A little tired, man. Just come back from vacation, but living my best life, man.
Oh yeah, you was in Jamaica, man. Yeah.
I was in Jamaica, man. Yeah, man.
Yeah, came back with an accent. I hope you got one of them fishnet tank tops, brother.
Nah, man. Let me tell you. What I was telling my wife, right? I was like, man, I looked at some of these brothers with their shirts off. I was like, oh my goodness. I was like, yo, man, I felt like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Man.
I was like, yo. We brothers, man.
You a sandwich or something, brother?
No, they're not. Their stomachs were huge. It was like, yo. I was like, man, yeah, I was buff compared to some of them brothers. I was like, yo.
Shout out to my brothers in Jamaica that's eating good out there. Shout out.
They were Americans in Jamaica. Don't blame it on them.
That's funny.
No, I was like, whoa, because I'm looking, I'm like, man, everybody had their shirts off at the pool and everything, man. I'm like, yo, I'm taking my shirt off now. I'm like, look, man.
Gave you some boldness now.
Oh, man. I'm like, yeah, let's take a picture.
That's funny, man. So, your friend President Trump, we just can't escape this brother, man.
I do, man.
We just can't escape this brother, man. He caused some issues. Him and Jillian Michaels. I don't know if you ever seen The Biggest Loser, as well. She kind of tried to soften the blow of slavery, historically. But let me just read.
What was her take? I didn't hear her take. What was her take?
Pretty much, imperialism and slavery. You can't kind of automatically give a broad brush on just white people in regards of slavery, and only 2% of the country was slave owners. I mean, she's neglecting the fact that
2% of what country?
That's what 2% of America. That's the fact that she gets.
Man, she must be on crack. That's how she lost that weight. I know I should have said 2%. Come on, you gotta be kidding me. Man. So what she's saying is they fought a civil war over 2%. Come on, man.
I mean, of course, it's been debunked and people were getting at her. But once again, it's that approach of trying to kind of soften, really, just the effects of slavery. Not realizing that it was not just ownership of people, but it was a systematic thing. Go ahead.
Trump said something today that kind of gives you the backdrop of this whole thing. He made a comment about he doesn't want maybe one of his aides made a comment that he doesn't want white kids, to walk through the museum and see the atrocities of history, like only bad things happen. And first of all, so basically what they're trying to do is soften the blow. They don't want to be in the record books of saying that this is what they're done.
Right.
However, you can tell he's never been to a museum before, because he would know museums are made up of exhibits. And the Smithsonian have so many different exhibits, man. And to me, you want to take that out, but are you going to take all inventions and stuff that Black people invented?
Well, let me tell you exactly what I have the quote here on his Twitter account. This is on President Trump's Twitter account.
Man, you on Trump's Twitter account, man? Come on, man.
No, I had to get exactly what he said. I'm just teasing.
Research. I know research.
It said the museums throughout Washington, but all over the country, is essentially the last remaining segment of woke. The Smithsonian is out of control. What does it say? It says, okay, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future. We are not going to allow this to happen. And I have instructed my attorneys to go through the museums and start the exact same process that has been done with colleges and universities, where tremendous progress has been made. This country cannot be woke because woke is broke. We have the hottest country in the world, and we want people to talk about it, including in our museums. So I just wanted to read that just to preface our conversation. So what bothered me is, one, I've been to the museum in DC, right? And for those who have not been there, it's literally a gradual process of success, like through time.
And that's what I was going to say. I don't know what he's looking at, but
yeah. But that's different because in 2017 he talked about how wonderful it was. He was reading from teleprompter, but he was speaking how wonderful it was, how progressive and how African Americans has tribute to American society. He was saying all this stuff, and all of a sudden, he's talking like this. But if you go to the museum, it's so much in the museum in regards of just a gradual success and growth from our landing in the Americas all the way up, through the science age and music and entertainment and the medical. It's like a gradual process of growth and success. But he's focused so much on this to put a tweet. And for me, it bothered me because I see, instead of people dealing with the elephant in the room, they're trying to cover it up with furniture and wallpaper, even trying to say it doesn't even exist, in regards of racism and the history of slavery in our country. And the thing is, one of the things that drives me crazy is that when people hear stories like this, when they talk about slavery, when they talk about these different things, when Black people emphasize this stuff, people always assume it's a victimhood, right? We're playing victims. That drives me crazy.
Well, but you know what? Black people drive that narrative too, because there's, and I think I mentioned to you about it, that somebody we know that talked about that.
Right.
They talked about how we have developed the victim, and I don't think recounting the truth, making sure the truth is told, is being a victim. I don't. I just think, that's like me if I cross the street and I get hit by a car, and I come back and say, Aaron, man, I got hit by a car. I'm not being a victim. I'm warning you not to do the same thing. I'm reminding you of something that actually took place. And I think we've been brainwashed to think that, we just, it's bad to remember that's what happened to us. It's bad because, it's making us, weaker or something. No, we have accomplished a lot. But if you go look at where we are now compared to where we were 5 years ago, we've lost a lot. They took away voters' rights. They're changing voters' rights. Heck, what they had down last year, the last election, presidential election, they made it against the law for churches to give out water bottles to people in line, hours and hours to, to vote. So you know what community that impacts. So when people say that, it's like either they're ignorant, not ignorant to stupid, but ignorant, just unaware,
right?
Or they just desensitize, and I think because slavery is real. We know it happened, man. Slavery is one of the greatest atrocities in this world. And people, you can compare it to what you want to compare, but there were Americans doing it to people. And they weren't people they conquered. It wasn't people who they bought, they victimized or, they had war with and they made them slaves. No, they purposely went and bought these people here to become slaves. To do what? To build a country. So when I hear people say that, so what are you going to say? The White House wasn't built by Black, well, Benjamin Banneker to do with the White House?
Right.
The electric you have, so there's so many things, man. I think that out of his ignorance, and people who say that don't understand how this country was built. Some of the greatest inventions in this country were built by African Americans. And I want to go back to his term woke. He doesn't understand the term.
Well, we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that because I think that term has been weaponized. But one of the things that really bothers me is, I think Trump's agenda is to anything that focuses on something that's a dark history. For him, it's going to breed anti-American. I have an issue with that because
that's a dark history against white people.
But here's the thing. Here's the thing with that.
Yeah.
If it wasn't literally for African American people,
yeah,
for the Africans that came here, we would not have America as we see it today.
But he's never going to say that.
So it's not, like literally. And Jillian Michaels, who is a white gay woman, you are benefiting from civil rights. All those white women that's out there, you're benefiting from the Voting Act rights, all those different things that stemmed from literally the blood, sweat, and tears of African Americans because of the struggle, because of wanting equal rights and equality. So for you to preference as if, yes, that was a dark past. But if you want to be honest, if it was really that serious, how many Black hate groups do you know were created to kill white people?
I mean, even go further. I mean, look at the bombing of the Alabama church. You killed 3 little girls. You bombed the church on a Sunday when you knew it was in service. Come on, man. That is apprehensible as you can get. Look at Ruby Bridges. A little girl wanted to go to school to get educated, and grown folk who should have been at work, by the way, out there harassing a little girl. I mean, come on. I mean, so you can sit and tell me, let's take slavery off the plate. Let's look at the stuff that was going on during the 50s and the 60s, man.
Right.
Well after slavery was over. I mean, just look at it. You had people who went and fought for this country and came back and couldn't go get a cup of coffee.
Right.
In a certain place, man. Like people forget Jackie Robinson was well before Muhammad Ali.
Right.
When he refused. So I mean, it's been the history of this country. It's not like just slavery. It's been this country throughout history has shown it's dislike for people who don't look like who they feel are majority. And you had George Washington and Thomas Jefferson who had slaves, slept with their slaves, had kids with their slaves, and that's like white. So come on, don't. And that happened why? Because they were slaves. They didn't volunteer.
Right.
So I mean, I think when I hear people say that, man, either you ignorant because you really don't know, or somebody like her, is because you want to remain better than. You want to keep yourself this, that we just a people of excuses. We didn't do anything. You want to kind of hold on to the stereotypes because it makes you feel better. It makes you feel superior. But you're stupid.
But then who's playing victim now at this point? Because you don't like the history. So who's playing victim now? Now, when you look at African American history in this country, you don't look at, there were groups that were resisting against racism. But for the most part, in regards of the literal progression of our society, it was majority through resilience. And I don't get why there's this paranoia, because if there was going to be hate groups that came and just wanted to pick off white folks, it would have been here. There would have been, and there's evidence of why people would want to do that because of the history of slavery in the country. So
this is the thing I want to read real quick. His aide said, Lindsay Halligan said, "What I saw at the Smithsonian Museum was an overemphasis on slavery. We should be able to take our kids through the Smithsonian and be proud when we leave." So I mean, history is history. You just don't take history and say history is going to make a bunch of little white kids feel good. It's not. That's not how this country was built. It's like, it's funny but you want to keep teaching the Boston Tea Party.
Right.
When you went there, and that would you call it what you want to call it, but they went on and they threw property, they destroyed property, they just, but and it kind of funny because you dressed up as Indian, so you started framing people long ago, long time ago you were framing people. So I mean, it's just crazy how people look at history and in honor of my man Damon, who's not here, they try to whitewash it, they try to make it seem like it's something it's not. But what they fail to realize is you're making it worse because people, you can't hide that. It's a fact. People are still going to find it out some way or another, and some of those people are going to resent the current system because you lied to them.
Right. Absolutely, man. And that's the thing, man. I mean, for him to say we look the bad stuff of slavery, as if there
Yeah.
was some good.
Good stuff. Well, no, there was a guy who came out last year and said that, it was job training.
Wow.
I've been in the church where I didn't hear the original conversation, but somebody couldn't understand, a white pastor couldn't understand why black folk got upset because, a white pastor came to visit. He made a comment, which tells me he doesn't read his Bible. Apparently, he made a comment that if it wasn't for slavery, black people wouldn't have became Christians.
Wow.
And he said that,
That's super ignorant,
at
brother.
a church. Yeah, but this is my point. When you don't know and you speak with authority, you know, and people don't do research. If I like you and you're charismatic, I believe what you say. So he knows it. He knows that Donald Trump knows, and his little crony knows there's a certain group of people that no matter what he says,
Mm-hmm.
no matter what he says, they're going to take it for fact. So slavery was heck, they said when we landed on man on the moon, there was a group of people that said that was a movie, that wasn't real. I
Right.
mean, it's like throughout history, you get a group of people who are just ignorant to a lot of things that's going on, and it doesn't take much to lead them astray. And I think with him, he recognizes it. He recognizes, that he has that power. And it's ironic because this is a guy who has 34 felons.
Mm-hmm.
34 felons. you know so that kind of tells you where he stands when it comes to the law, his view of the
Right.
law. That's the
Right.
same guy who openly said you could grab a woman, because of who he was. Anyway, basically what he said, and nothing happened. I could shoot somebody in the middle of Times Square in New York City, and people who follow me wouldn't say a word. That's the problem.
Right.
But the bigger problem I have is, where are all the African American leaders at? Well, I don't understand. It's almost this deafening silence, man, where we get upset over a whole lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But all those same people who said, I don't want to wear a mask because it's my right in this country not to wear a mask when COVID was out there killing people. Where are you now? Because now you're taking books out of schools. Now you taking you dictating to museums. So where's the Fifth Amendment when I got the right of free speech?
Right. Right.
And I said it when he started with the colleges, that everything this man does is strategy. He strategizes. He starts small because I know if I can win it, I could keep going. And he did. He started at one school, the school's caved. Now he's with the museums. What's next? What is he going to censor next? Churches? Because we don't have a
Probably.
Trump Bible.
Possibly. So you mentioned earlier, man. He keeps, this word woke. Right. We keep hearing this from the Republicans. We're not going to have we're not going to be woke. Woke is broke. Tried to rhyme. Let's discuss woke, because we hear it a lot. We talk a lot of, that's a catchphrase that is seemingly, like utilized to explain when someone is pretty much speaking against the system, the powers that be. And so from the Republican side of things, that term woke is so nuanced. Well, it's actually broad brushed, not even nuanced. It's broad brushed into a certain category that is viewed as a negative thing, a very negative thing. Let's define what does woke mean to you, man? What does woke mean to you?
I mean, when I look at woke, it just means I will say this: it's an African American phrase.
Right.
Because to me, when I hear the word woke, it means that we are aware of the social injustices. We're aware of the inequality that we have in this country. We're aware that in some cases we're still separate class citizens. We're aware that we're not always not close to being truly equal. Whether it's the way our females are treated when it comes to jobs and being paid less money, all those things together. Woke just means being conscious, man, understanding what's truly happening to us people, especially around race. But to me, and I just had this discussion earlier, society, we have a way of trying to redefine. We were talking about culture on our podcast, Above Average Black Men. And one of the things I said about what's wrong with our culture now is because it's for, we change the definition of stuff all the time.
Right.
All the time. So there's no real standard. So he turned around and said, okay, well, woke means, so people just fall in line and believe it. It's the same thing with the N-word. Well, now all of a sudden that's cool. It's not cool, because when certain people like him hear that N-word, you know what they're thinking: ignorant, stupid, worthless. But
Right.
we use it freely in our community. So I think that's him just changing the term woke is something that we've done in society for a long time, man. And personally, he's smart enough to realize if he says it enough, the same people who don't want to see history being told about Black people are going to rally around it.
Right.
They're going to rally around it, and they're going to take what he said. And that's just, unfortunately, again, I'll put it back to us. There has to become a point in time, man, when we. I'm not going to say. Yeah, I'm going to say there has to be a time we get angry enough and frustrated enough that we begin to speak up, to speak up. We begin to unify, man, and say, you know what? This is how, we're not voting for these shenanigans anymore. This is the way we're going to vote. If you can't respect me, and I left a church because of that, because I felt like as an African American, I wasn't being respected.
Hmm.
It wasn't blatant racism, but as an African American, who I am, where I come from, wasn't being respected. And I think this is what we're starting to see throughout the whole country. And to me, the term woke is a perfect example because I tear it down, make it mean something bad, and then I put it out there, and all people who think like me is like a dog whistle.
Right. And it's been weaponized.
Yeah,
I love
you agree.
I love the definition that Pastor Eric Mason gave for woke. He wrote a book called Woke Church. He defines woke as no longer being naive nor in mental slavery. It is a term for being socially aware of issues that have systematic impact. It has to do with seeing all of the issues and being able to connect cultural, socioeconomic, philosophical, historical, and ethnic dots. He also says this. He wants to have an honest reconciliation that faces the issues of our broken past. To begin this process, we must revisit our history, proclaiming the gospel to each season and seek reconciliation, restoration, restitution as it is appropriate. And so I love that definition because what we're hearing from the Republican side of these things is that woke is creating, revisiting history, being angry, it's anti-USA, it's anti-American, anti-patriotism, all these different things. When all actuality, even the formation of our country was based off of really woke ethics when you think about it.
Yeah, but that's the funny thing about people. Napoleon Hill said people don't know the history, do not repeat it. It's
Yes.
funny because the very things they're and I've been saying this for years. And it's funny because somebody texted me earlier and told me be careful. They were joking, because I thought it highly ironic that people came to this country to be free from tyranny and all stuff like that,
Right.
But you turn around and made us slaves.
Right.
And you thought that was okay.
Right.
Even when you wrote these great documents, that's supposed to represent American, you put us down as 3/5 of a person.
Right.
There would be no need for voter rights, legislation and things of that nature if they were treating people equally.
Equally, absolutely.
There would be no need for some of the stuff they complain of. DEI. There's DEI because you couldn't do what you were supposed to do on your own.
Right.
That it took legislation. I'm gonna read something to you, and this tells you what we're talking about, how they change things. Woke derived from African American vernacular English generally means being aware, similar to what Pastor Mason said, and actively attentive to issues of racial and social justice, particularly systematic inequities. It originated in the Black community and was used to signify awareness of racial prejudice and discrimination. Now, this is where it gets funny because this is where they change it. Over time, its meaning has expanded to encompass a broader social justice concerns, including sexism, LGBTQ rights. Right. However, the term has also become highly publicized, with some using it as a derogatory term for those perceived as politically left leaning or overly sensitive. So see, again, how they manage to shift things. They change the definition of things to make it fit their narrative. And
it's been hijacked.
And I don't think as a people, we haven't picked up on it. It's just like the whole Black Lives Matters movement when that thing was going down, and people just, Black Lives Matters, and they is a part of this gay thing, and they went down this whole rabbit hole about it, but that's not how it originated. And then the point, because I asked somebody a question, well, okay, if they were gay, but don't their life still matter as a Christian? Right. Me as a Christian male, doesn't that life still matter to me? Mm-hmm. So I think even in the church, we've allowed this to happen. And, I mean, I don't expect anything different from Trump. I'm not even surprised that there's a whole group of people who follow him because they do follow him blindly. You
Yeah.
know, I just don't see them moving on the other side. One, to make sure we educate our kids on what woke really means so they don't get sucked into that rabbit hole. Because I think this is why you get people who look like us sometimes on the other side of the fence because they believe that nonsense.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. I think, as you mentioned, certain things were hijacked, implemented, added
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
really the definition. And it's not a rigid, it's so fluid. And I
Yeah.
think that part of it is where they, like those in the Republican Party, those who are the right wing, they take an issue. That's why in regards of like the school books, it's not necessarily Black history books per se. And I heard they do want to take those out because DEI is becoming a dog whistle too for a lot of
Yeah.
ignorance. But a lot of the LGBTQ issues and struggles, they kind of conflate those with woke, as you mentioned, even in the definition. And so when they see that, it's pretty much an all-out assault on any individuals and situations and histories and all these different things like that to get that information out of schools, keep away from kids and things of that nature.
Yeah, but it's again, we've allowed it to happen. We've allowed we have to be more purposeful and intentional about like what Pastor Mason said, sharing the real definition.
Right.
Because they're intentional about distorting it. It's
Right.
it's and it's funny you should say it on the sidebar. Target just they had their CEO just step down because of his stance with DEI and everything. So there are some people out there who are running around it. But I just think as a whole, we have to get back to being a community. We have to get back as a country, and I don't want to go too far because I know it's a segment on here, but we got to stop thinking because it's not impacting me now that it's never going to impact.
Absolutely.
We gotta stop thinking that. And I think as Christians, we do. I know we got this whole thing where some people think we don't, but I think we had more power as a people when the churches got involved in social justice.
Right.
When they made us. I'm not saying go out there and I'm not a big fan of marching without a follow up. Marching is great, but if there's no follow up, you're just kind of
Right.
taking a walk.
Right.
I do think
got your steps in pretty much.
yeah, we do a better job of that. But I also think our silence is deafening, which I also think contributes to why young people don't come to church.
No, that's a major reason why.
What do
Right.
we stand for?
Right.
What do we stand for? And then I sit there and I read my Bible where Jesus was speaking up for the poor. He was speaking up for the homeless. You know what I mean? He was doing, and then I come to church and you're talking about you're following this guy, but yet you don't possess the characteristics.
Right. And that's what actually that's a good segue.
Yeah.
Because let's talk about what are the theological ramifications of Trump's views. Is his views furthering dividing the white church, the Black church, the youth? Is it like so? And so when I hear that, when I see this stuff, right? And here's another comment, another tweet that is literally throwing dirt on the history of a demographic of this country that built it. I have a problem with that because even biblically, when you look up in scripture, right? I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? It's a constant, even when Moses, when he was freeing the Israelites, he constantly reminded them and told them, I am the God that delivered thee out of the land of Egypt and out of the house of bondage. It's all in scripture. Now, all of a sudden, when you have thousands, a group of people who also were literally placed in slavery, in bondage, and they're remembering their stories, remembering their struggles, remembering where they came from, you say that's a bad thing, but all in scripture. We talk about the lineage of David, Moses, even in Christ, and what that lineage represents, slavery, the Israelites, all those different things. That's cool, right? You could be in church, in the evangelical church talk about you're no longer a slave to sin and all these different things. But when you literally have a demographic of people who've had generations of people that have dealt with slavery and literally saying that our brains are smaller than everybody else's brains and all different like that, when you want to remember that history and talk about that, all of a sudden, that's a no-no. We shouldn't do that.
It's how you remember the history. I give you what I'm learning is the Bible has become this tool for us to interpret in a way it benefits us. There was a pastor female pastor, and we kind of had a little discussion around this because she, pray for your leaders and so forth like that and obey your leaders. And so she started talking about, God put Trump in office. And my thing was, we got to stop saying because God allowed something that he did it. There's a difference. Mm-hmm. There's a distinct difference with God allowing something to happen for him actually putting somebody in office. And I went back and I said, go back. And I said, if you go back and you look at in Samuel, that's what happened with Saul. God didn't put Saul there.
People voted him in.
They wanted a king. He don't need a king. They wanted a king because everybody else had a king. Right. So but I think people leave that part out and they just say, like, even obey. The Bible tells us that, yeah, we should obey the law of the land, except when it goes against the laws of God. I think we forget about that we can't just say, okay, because the land says okay for us to sin, we can go sin. No, we can't do that. And I think we've adopted this mindset that we want a king, and because he's this person, it's okay because he says it's okay. It's funny because who Kirk Cameron is, right?
Yes.
He came out and said, now, this ain't sacrilegious. I don't know what it is. The pastors in this country to take their cue from Donald Trump. That's my point. Dude, tell me that's not crazy. So now you're talking about the religious, so now you're talking about basically an idol.
Right.
So, and this is a guy who's supposed to be sold out. You got all these movies about righteousness and all that stuff like this, man. And look what you do. So right. I think that's part of the problem because, you have more people who gravitate to that because of who he is.
Right.
Or when I hear somebody, my wife was watching something the other day, and some guy is this young guy that has a podcast or something, and he debates these people these Trumpers. It's a young Caucasian guy, and one guy was on there, and he was destroying them. All the guy kept saying is, "But I'm going to support Trump because I believe in Trump. Forget all the illegals thing and all the crazy stuff. And like right now, I'll just John Deere is laying off all this because they're losing money because of all the tariffs. And John Deere is like the official tractor, but people don't pay attention to that.
Right.
People just because I think I go back to the woke thing. He's figured out that race is still an issue in this country. And if I can cause a disdain between rich people and poor people and Caucasian people and all minorities, I'm going to win. And that's what he did. He did it. And the sad part about it, the church is following suit because we should be just like, what do you say? And Billy Graham Jr. or Franklin Graham, which to me, should be kicked out the church. Trump says, yeah, well, I should be able to get into heaven because if I end this war. And Billy Graham and well, you can because you can get in heaven on your works. That's not what the Bible says.
Right. That's works-based. That's works-based. We had a literal episode about discipling Trump. And, we looked at his theology, his thoughts. And for him to say, him stopping the war, actually, the sign of the Antichrist.
Oh, yeah.
Is someone that said they're going to bring peace. Literally one of the signs of the Antichrist.
But you got Franklin Graham, who was the son of arguably one of the greatest evangelists this country has ever seen, saying that, oh, you can't get in by your work. Come on, man. This is why I would never go Liberty University. Because Liberty University, I would never sign up for a class at Liberty University. Never. They couldn't give me a class.
Hopefully Liberty University will never be a sponsor. I'm just saying. No, but man, listen, when I mean it literally, the more the church is already divided because
you're right.
There is this, I'm telling you, this Western Christian nationalism that you're giving this cookie cutter voice box to, not being objective, not looking at things. Christ dealt with people different ways for different reasons. So when he dealt, go ahead.
if you got to be a part of something that has, you have to add something to the term Christian. That's a problem.
Well,
That's the first.
well, that
That's the first red flag right there.
well, the view is God and country for a lot of
But
people.
I'm saying, yeah,
All right,
but that's not biblically based. That's not close to being biblically based.
right,
You know,
absolutely.
it, Christianity is just not based on the USA. It's not.
And
As a
that's
matter of
that
fact, I will
right.
argue the point that we're not a Christian country. Just because we got, trust God on a dollar bill, we're not. I would argue that we're not a Christian country. I would argue that fact.
And and just think about this too.
Yeah,
We look at even on our money. We have slave
yeah. And
masters
God,
on our we got slave masters on our money.
we celebrate them on President's Day, my brother.
And so think about in regards of mentally, right?
Yeah.
When you hear about trauma and people who've dealt with post-traumatic stress through abuse or war or whatever, even if it's generations, right? Like I have family members who dealt with, trauma and those different things. And it didn't happen to me, but how I approach people, how I approach my children, the ripple effect from their experience is on me. So when you see money that you have to get, that you're utilizing to get things, and they're bona fide slave owners, slave masters on the actual money that you're using as currency, like it's just blatant disregard. And I think one of the elements that I feel that white America, who was just have the same viewpoint as Donald Trump in regards of slavery, look at the catastrophe. The catastrophe, man, is the catastrophe of slavery is like layered, literally layered. It's layered socially, spiritually, mentally, economically. It's layered. And I think if you really sit down, you want us to sit down and look at numbers of 2%, which was ridiculous, and you want us to think logically, you want to do all these different things. Like, no, we need you to think logically. We need you to really look at the fact, if you're gonna celebrate 9/11 every year and remember that time, and I'm not, kind of measuring catastrophes or not, but that's a lot.
Oh no, I mean, and I think it's worse because they're both catastrophes. Don't get me wrong, but
Oh yeah,
9/11 was another country attacking us.
right,
Slavery was this country, was here. That was
right,
nobody outside that was here. And it was perpetuated over a period of time. It was signed off on, it was agreed upon, whatever you want to call it, man. It was. So it's a difference. Like when I had people, the Holocaust was real. And they try to say that wasn't real. Those mass shootings in those schools, those kids got killed, was real.
right,
This here, like those shootings happened on American soil.
right,
It was Americans doing this. It wasn't somebody who believes in a different faith. It was Americans.
right,
And so for you to just those two things right there speaks volumes about our elected officials to say all those kids that lost their lives in the school that it was made up, it wasn't real. To say that slavery, it just shows you who we're dealing with. And again, to me, the lack of pushback is what worries me because he's going to keep going until somebody or some people stand up. That's just the bottom line. He's going to keep going. He's going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And he said it, just like we did with the colleges. So now he's starting the museums. So
right,
what's next? He's censoring the museums. So what are you going to, so what's next? You're going to churches? If you're not preaching what I think you should preach, if you're not preaching the Trump Bible, if you're, what are you going to say? Take it out of the Bible now?
right.
Any scripture. So, and I'm telling you, and people say this is going too far. It reminds me of back in slavery days where they were misinterpreting the Bible on purpose.
Yep.
When they were using the Bible to keep people enslaved and to justify it. So I think, so I see history repeating itself. Again, we're just I don't understand why we're quiet. Not just quiet, man. Are we doing, like I said on my podcast, We need to be teaching our kids the real definition of this stuff. We need to make sure churches need to be talking about, how we're not just slaves. So we got to get past that point. But
Right.
we are descendants of slaves. When somebody says go back home, you brought me here.
Right. What home? My home is here.
Yeah. So, but those are the issues that I think, because whenever you're silent, man, people keep pushing.
Right.
They keep pushing, man, and at some point in time, man, there has to be a collective effort. Just like was going to benefit when he passed the thing about now churches can donate money to legitimately doing all along. So some of those Caucasian mega churches, who they endorsing.
Right.
Who they endorsing. Now the question is, are African American churches, are they going to pull their resources together and they're going to endorse somebody? Probably not.
Right. Well, I think some have. I honestly,
I don't mean some. I mean as a whole. I know some.
Yeah,
I'm talking about as a whole.
When they put
Yeah.
when they put that ruling about the churches actually now being able to support political
Yeah.
things, I thought it was already doing it anyway. I mean, honestly, I seen a lot
but they
of
were
people
not
in
doing it legally.
churches.
They weren't doing it legally, but they were doing it, man. They were making donations probably through CDCs, and it's just me speculating. Probably through
Right.
other entities. They probably were.
Right.
They probably were.
Right. So
Because
let's go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I said let's talk about moving forward. As we close, man, in regards of practical. Where do we go from here, man, as a faith community, man? Like moving forward. And some of the things you actually mentioned. But I want to add a caveat to what you said in regards of, teaching our younger people about what exactly what woke is. I think one practical thing, for all the African American, all those people, brown, black, even the white folk that support and understand the importance and value of history. You now see that history is now being attacked and ultimately trying to be erased. I think one major practical approach how we move forward is to keep repeating the stories. Keep repeating the stories. One of the things I notice about younger people, especially like in the middle school age, there is this disinterest in history, literally Black history. I don't want to hear about it no more. Even if it's, we just talk about Harriet Tubman. I mean, you literally talk about scientists and all different types of people, and they still like, I don't care about that. The last thing these young people need is not to be told about history, because they're disinterested in history as a whole. They don't even care. You got kids literally walking around as a TikTok trend, acting like they're beating somebody with a whip with their phone cords. Like that's what they do. Some of the young people are doing that. And white people are, their white friends are laughing and giggling and doing it as well. Like it's like a joke, and they take everything, as a joke, but then when certain people get in the office and some of their friends and their parents might get deported, or they're seeing different things in regards of, history being changed, where they're decreasing the intensity of the ugliness of slavery and trying to modify it. I've seen this PBS cartoon with Christopher Columbus, and it was trying to tell in a cartoon, saying that, slavery wasn't that bad. It could have been much worse. This is what the indoctrination that we're seeing.
First thing I do is everybody got to watch Roots. Seriously.
Yeah.
You Roots.
They're gonna mess around and burn those movies too.
Roots needs to be in schools that people can actually watch it and see, and learn that this is really what these are the atrocities that are perpetuated against us.
I would say Amistad too. That's another one too.
But the thing about Amistad, you got to tell the whole, and I think they don't tell the other side of the story, was that there was a countless number of ships who got away, who they went and see. This also kind of get rid of the narrative that we didn't know anything, because you just don't know how to sail a ship in a day. So for the confiscated ship being to sail a ship, you had to be sailors.
Right.
But there was an island that a lot of these slaves, and they became pirates. Basically, they became pirates. And the British could not win, because while the British was fighting fair, getting down on these and everything, they were fighting from the jungle.
Right.
and they end up signing a treaty. So the point I'm making is this goes back to what we were talking about earlier: is people just don't know history. But I do think Amistad and roots. But to your point, I think and education is the key. We got to
Right.
start educating our kids, man. We have to make sure, because we keep saying it should happen at home and it's not happening at home.
Right.
It's not, and we need to make sure. I'll give you a perfect example. I remember my grandmother telling me stories, God rest her soul, about how we had ancestors who came over. Downtown in Center City, people don't know this, but right there on Market Street, I think it's like 6th and Market. It's a little block on the ground there in the Independence Square area where they used to sell slaves at.
In
Ironic, isn't
Philly,
it?
in Philly.
Yeah.
Right.
Ironic,
Right.
isn't it?
Right.
But they used to take them off the waterfront and they used to walk
Right.
them up Market Street and they would sell them right there. And I remember my grandmother telling me the story about that one of our ancestors. They took the shackles off of him. He jumped in the water. And that's how he got away, and that's how he got. I don't know how true it was, but stuff like that don't get passed. And I would go down south, and we would be on the farm, and my father's aunt would be, aunts would be telling us, relatives would be telling us about what the farm meant and things happened on the farm, and how we had a farm where they started as sharecroppers, and then they became all that stuff, man. We got to start. We need to pass those stories down. Jewish community do it. The Asian
Yes.
community, they do it. They pass down those stories. We stopped doing it. We started watching Good Times and all them other shows that come on TV, and I'm not knocking TV, don't get me wrong, but we invested more time in that than we did passing down our history. For some of us, that's become our history. I remember, real quick, I do a lot of fatherhood stuff. I remember I used to ask guys, what is your closest, what do you associate your family with the closest? What show? Good Times or the Cosby's? You know how many more people say Good Times?
Oh yeah.
Because they couldn't fathom in their head a house where they got the two parents together and they got a doctor and they got a lawyer. That ain't real.
Right.
That's crazy.
Right.
So we got to get back to educating them, man. And I'm gonna tell you, adversity, they're smart to know if they take it out and keep them uneducated, they'll keep us right where we are. Because we won't know we're descendants of kings and queens. We won't know about Shaka Zulu, who defeated the British Empire over there, man. Because these strategies and stuff. We don't know about Queen Sheba, who was black.
Right. Right.
Hannibal was black, who
Right.
conquered the Alps. When they had the fronts fortified, he took the elephants and went up the Batway. So I mean, there's so many things that our kids could know and become proud of, and not we weren't just slaves. And there was a lot of slaves who tried to get away. There were slaves who got tortured, got the cat, all kind of stuff. So I think same thing biblically based in the church. We got to talk about the Ethiopian.
Right. And
We got.
let me add a caveat to that, what
Yeah.
you're saying now, because sometimes Black Christians, they really decrease their ethnicity a lot. A lot of Black Christians
Yeah.
do that, and Christ does not demand that we relinquish who we are and how, and the image that we're walking in the creation that we're in. And I think a lot of times our social stances and things we should say and things we should do, it literally called internal confrontation between my Blackness and my faith, and that can't happen. And so,
Good
for those
point.
who are listening that are struggling,
Excellent point.
right, to say, well, I'm not going to stand up for this, or I got to just get over this because I'm Christian and things of that nature, that is not biblical. Like, dealing with confrontation and dealing with issues and dealing with injustices and things of that nature, that is your Christian calling. There's no getting around that. It's in the Old Testament and the New Testament. So for you to sit there and just sit in the Christian nationalist seats, because that's what's going on when you speak against injustices and things of that nature, and you'll bring up, fatherless homes, and you'll bring up all these different things. The reality of the situation is you cannot, it is not biblical for your Blackness and the situations that have risen from your ethnicity socially. You can't just tuck that under a rug somewhere and say, well, because I'm Christian and I'm just not going to move and I'm not going to act. You can't do that.
And I agree with you, but we have.
Yeah.
We have. We've
And
we almost
we
felt like,
need more time for this show, brother. Go on, man. We about the time is almost short. Finish up, man.
we've come to a place where we almost feel guilty about about our ethnicity. I remember some people say, "Oh, race don't matter." So my comeback is always the same. If race and ethnicity doesn't matter, then why in the upper room did he speak in different languages?
Exactly.
He's God. He could have just spoken one language. He got everybody, but he
Right.
met them
Everybody
where
got to
they.
follow to that one
Yeah.
language. Right.
So I think, don't tell me he doesn't respect that. If you go look, and I talked about my devotion. There's a reason why he talked about having ears and not listening, and hearing, and eyes and not seeing, because those stiff necked, the population he was dealing with didn't want to hear it.
Absolutely.
So he went to, so I don't know. I just think, and he purposely said, what was Paul's mission? The Gentiles.
Right.
That was his mission. So I don't know. I think part of it is we've been duped, we've been hoodwinked, as Malcolm X would say, to believe that there is no color in religion. And then my comeback again is, then why do they make Jesus white with blonde hair and blue eyes? Then it does matter.
Right.
It
They
does.
weaponized it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, the Kings have spoken. And if we have more time, we'll be continue to speaking about this situation, because that one last part, that caveat with our culture and our Christianity, that can be a whole nother show.
That
And
could
we
be
will
a month-long series.
definitely. Thank you for joining us. Shout out to our family, Holy Culture Radio. If you want to know more about the King Movement, go to our website at www.thekingmovement.com, and on Instagram at The King Movement, and on X at The King Movement. Thank you so much for joining us here. Shout out to our family once again at Holy Culture Radio, Sirius XM channel 140, and also our family on Glue TV. We pray that you heard something that sparked inquiry, that strengthened you, and that we continue to grow together as a people in our world and our society. God bless you. And as we always say, bro, strong
In the Lord.
God bless you.
Peace, man.